Khan got up on his feet, trying to get away from these things that were pretending to be his family. For reasons unknown, he could not think straight and with a rational mindset. His state was completely different from his usual calm and confident demeanor. In his previous life as Elric, his family had a huge impact on his personality. Not because they were always there for him and uplifted him when he was down in spirit, but because they were simply there but never actually with him. The constant feeling of not being enough and not being special originated because of them in the first place. Normally, people would do their best to raise their children to be a better person and someone who should strive for better things and higher goals in their lives. Eric's parents indeed acted like good parents. Just not for him but his elder brother David and sister Cynthia. Jonas, his father, was always there to support his brother who was in school's baseball team, while Sarah, his mother, always took the side of her daughter and wanted to see her achieve something in the world of fashion and entertainment. Elric, on the other hand, received the least of their attention as he never showed any kind of promise in any sector, even if was related to education. He was simply average at everything throughout his childhood days and weak when it came to physical sports and exercises. So they never thought highly of him. Unlike how many parents treat their children, his brother was the pearl of their eyes while his sister was their princess. He, on the other hand, was more like the unplanned child they never really wanted. He was nothing but a liability to them ever since he could remember. And now, that same family was insulting him and throwing slanders at him. Suddenly, the system's sound rang in his mind. System detects that the host is being influenced by an external presence and the body is affected by some form of hallucinogen. The host is advised to sever the source of these chemicals to recover from this state. System informed Khan about the actual reason why he was feeling this way. Hallucinogen? When did I come in contact with it? He asked himself and tried to recount the incidents since he entered inside this floor. He hadn't made any contact with anyone or anything for that matter. So there truly wasn't any other way he could be spiked with hallucinogens. He didn't even eat or drink anything when he met Arkham Va Solomon this morning. So how was it possible that he was dosed with the hallucinogen? Khan thought in his mind, trying to focus on his own consciousness rather than giving in to the voices he was hearing. "The fog!" shouted Khan as he finally came to a realization. It was the air he breathed since he came here was the main culprit. Now he understood why his body was unaffected throughout the day and started feeling slower when he reached the innermost parts of this floor where the fog was far denser. Omega, Blackwell, Armin. He called out the three subordinates and was quickly surrounded by them. Armin, the priest, started casting debuff cleansing and healing spells at him. Just in a couple of minutes, Khan finally regained his sanity and noticed his senses coming back to functioning properly again. "I see. So that's why not many lived after coming to this floor," spoke Khan as he finally got the gist of why barely anybody made out alive from here. Because they were either affected in their minds or scared to death before they were hunted down by whatever creatures that lied on this floor. He quickly called Cyril out and both started throwing wind magic spells around their surroundings and cleared out the dense fog that was surrounding them all this time. Swoosh! Khan sensed something on his left and Blackwell took a guard in the front. Khan took the left while Omega took the right. Cyril and Armin took the center and quickly set up a team formation. Because in such moments, any enemy could flank them from an opening. Khan didn't summon the others because he wanted to see the face of the enemy first. Creak. Flutter. He heard the sound of something passing from the surrounding trees and the sound of small leaves and branches breaking. Whatever it was big. If not for his heightened senses after becoming a grandmaster. Khan's mind probably would have given in a long time before the system even warned him. He was lucky that he didn't come to this floor before he broke through the grandmaster rank. He then switched to his hunter's intent again and found a trace of body heat among the woods. His team slowly following the tracks without causing too much noise. Even the giant bodies of Omega and Blackwell trod softly in this area. After passing through the trees and following the tracks, Khan's senses finally picked up a huge and long figure at the end of the tree lines. He quickly pulled everyone back in his shadow and activated Shadow Walk. After walking through the shadow of these thick and broad tree lines, he saw a monstrous figure. For the first time, Khan was horrified for a bit after watching any creature in front of him. He gazed at this figure from the shadows and felt lucky that he didn't see it when he was affected by the hallucinogens, because the ghastly, creepy, and outright terrifying figure would have given a heart attack to anyone with a weak mind. The upper body of this giant and long monster had 8 hands with claws so big that they could cut a man's head in a single sweep. Its nose was that of those Khan saw on the snakekin assassin, the body complete pale white. But that wasn't the creepiest part. What gave Khan an eerie feeling is the lower half of this creature's body. It was completely that of a giant scaly snake. At this moment, Khan spoke to himself. I'ma head out. Just by looking at the floor boss that was slithering in between the trees, Khan felt like something was crawling under his skin. One thing he knew for sure. He could not fight this floor boss head-on. Because after suffering through the effects of those hallucinations and reuniting with his family again, he had no will to endure that trauma once more. How do I kill it? Asked Khan to himself, because there were truly few options if he wanted to kill this floor boss. Because after the recent experience, it became a personal grudge for him. He was gonna kill the damn monster no matter what. Khan thought of possible plans, such as putting the monster in a corner or surrounding it from all the sides and ambushing it. But after some time of thinking, he thought of it as a naive choice because other than the information of the fog, he had no clue about the different abilities and skills of this floor boss at all. Planning anything prematurely could spell disaster for him. This opponent was indeed really strong based on the aura he felt around it. And most importantly, despite being 8 meters tall and nearly 30 meters long, the creature was extremely well versed in hiding, as if it was part of the environment itself. Because even Khan, who was now a Grandmaster-level fighter, had a hard time to sense and track it down. I guess I have no other choice, said Khan, and went a kilometer away and deactivated Shadow Walk. He let out 2 Minotaurs va 10 nymphs from his shadow and went back into hiding again. He was going to use these subordinates as a sacrificial lamb so he could learn about the skills of this boss and prepare accordingly. When Khan was 500 meters away from the boss, he found that the boss could sense the incoming enemies from a mile away. Means it had extremely well hearing. Or maybe smell, given how it was letting out its tongue more often. If not for Khan's shadow walk, which completely hid his presence, aura, and heat signatures, he would have been found a long time ago. But unexpectedly, the boss didn't choose to fight them head-on. It slithered across the woods and kept releasing a fog from the various outlet-like openings on its body, trying to scare its prey and then attack them when they were in turmoil because of this hallucinogenic chemical that was mixed into the fog. A small battle erupted between his subordinates and the floor boss. Little did the boss know that these subordinates he used as fodders didn't possess any free will of their own. They only acted as per his command. So the boss ended up revealing more of its fighting skills when it felt like it was playing with food. Khan understood one thing, that the floor boss had the advantage in speed and quick reflexes, but other than the fog that was coming out from its secretory glands from outlets on its body, the boss had only one offensive ability. And that was the long tendrils that were coming from its back, which also had hard spear-like pointy ends. And during the fight, it used these flexible and agile tendrils as long-range weapons and attacked multiple opponents at the same time. Even the tough-skinned Minotaurs fell against this ability. Khan too possessed the extension skill that was similar to this skill, but it had a very short range, and the pikes that were thrown from his bodies were detached as soon as they came out of his hands, and he couldn't take them back inside him. These tendrils, on the other hand, would still be connected to the monster boss, and some of these tendrils had hook-like ends. Is that it? And this bastard scared the shit out of me, said Khan as he was stupefied how this floor boss left him witless, but in reality, it had the combat strength similar to the nymph floor boss. Even the Minotaur floor boss he previously fought on the earlier floor had more combat skills and innate abilities than this one. If you left the advantage of the hallucinogenic fog it could create, there really wasn't much this boss could do. Other than the tendrils, it had no offensive skills that could be used in a long arduous battle. The most commendable trait it had was the speed and reflexes during the fight. Plus, the sensing ability through hearing and smell was indeed very useful, even for someone like Khan, whose hearing had a range of 30 meters at best if he wanted to hear whispers and talks from a distance. Ah! Damn it! Spoke Khan as he left the shadows of the tree. Grab its attention and keep it busy. Ordered Khan to his subordinates, and his small army left his shadow in seconds. He used Shadow Walk again as he disappeared while his army under the lead of Omega attacked and surrounded the floor boss. And since the fog didn't work on his subordinates, the floor boss was forced into a corner. Blackwell taunted the boss with his skills, forcing it to focus and attack him while Omega and Jugram dealt a lot of damage. Cyril played a vital role as he kept shooting highly damaging magic spells, and Armin provided many attack buffs to the other generals. In half an hour, the floor boss was excessively bleeding from various places, but it couldn't even run away because the enemies had one strong fighter in all directions and had extremely well-timed attacking coordination. With the advantage of using the fog being turned useless, the floor boss turned into a disappointing opponent. After having its complete attention on the enemies it was facing, it failed to sense a black shadow coming its way. When it was fighting against the onslaught, it felt a swift pain. Kacha! The floor boss's head was pierced through by a long sword. Before it could sense what was happening, the head was split into two and the giant slithering body dropped on the ground. A human figure that was holding the pierced sword in his hand and was currently standing on the back of the floor boss where those tendrils came from sighed in disappointment. He easily finished this boss by bullying it with numbers while losing only a few of his subordinates, and landed the killing blow when it was completely exhausted and distracted. "My disappointment is immeasurable and my day ruined," spoke Khan with a dejected face. "I hope at least the abilities are useful," said Khan and put his hand on the corpse. Absorb. After spending nearly 30 minutes, Khan was finally done with absorbing the skills of this hybrid-like creature. Through the system, he learned the name of this species: the Pethrals, a variant species that originated from lamias and humans. As for how did it come into existence, he had no idea, but the plus point was that the monster was Lord rank. If not for his advantage in numbers, he would have had some hard time killing it, and the monsters could have also escaped if Khan fought it by himself. System. Show me the new skills. The host has acquired the following abilities: VA skills. Hallucinogenic Toxin, B rank, active. Allows the host to secrete hallucination toxin inside the host's body and spread it from any body part by creating an outlet. Mist Cloud. Allows the host to create a gaseous mist. Tendril, B rank, active. Allow the host to create long-range extensions from the body. Sonar Hearing, B rank, passive. Allows the host to have an acute hearing range of 200 meters. Cold Body. Allows the host to completely decrease the body temperature to 0, and the host will also be unaffected by extreme cold environment. Note: some of these abilities can be merged and some can be mixed under different synthesized abilities and skills. The system listed the new abilities and also told him that they could be used furthermore. Show me the merged skills. Ordered Khan, and the system gave only 3 abilities. But instead of feeling dejected, he was rejoiced after seeing the possible results. "Merge them all!" exclaimed Khan as he was very happy with the possible outcomes. "Synthesis complete," replied the system. "Show me the details." The host has synthesized and acquired the following abilities and skills. Grappling Extension. Allows the host to create black fleshly extensions from any body parts and control them at his will in any distance, direction, and length. The ends of these extensions can also change shapes as per the host's will and will be made from hard and metallic pikes from the nymph host has previously absorbed abilities from. Current range, 30 meters. Toxin Mist. Allows the host to mix the hallucinogenic toxins and release them in the form of mist or fog. Current range, 20 meters. Sonar Hearing has been merged under Hunter's Intent to raise its efficiency. However, the exclusive ability can still be used individually. Replied the system as it gave details of his new skills. Author, mention the last part because some of the readers have been misunderstanding that once the abilities VA skills are merged, the original one disappears. Remember, he isn't using physical bodies to create these skills like he has to while creating subordinates where the original bodies will disappear. The merged skills have the combined effects of both the skills in a single skill/ability, while the original ones can still be used. "Bingo!" shouted Khan in joy. He put his hand on the back of the Pethrol and gently caressed it. "I'm sorry I called you ugly and terrifying. Thank you for the skills," spoke Khan. "System, name the toxin mist as fear toxin," he commanded. He went for the short and simple name. As for the resultant skills he got, they were simply useful. He could use this fear toxin mist or a fog to hunt down people in groups as he jumps right in the center, and this hallucinogenic toxin would scare the shit out of his enemies and completely break down their battle formation. And if he put his subordinates in the equation, since they were unaffected by this skill, it'd be a one-sided slaughter. And the grappling extension was also simply amazing. He could use it to reach heights and even swing through long distances when he shot these extensions from his hands. This could work as his grappling gun belonging to a certain black-caped guy who had pointy bat ears on his mask. Sonar hearing was, without doubt, his best hearing skill, and now being merged under Hunter's intent. The skill turned no different than the detective mode of the Caped Crusader. But there was one more advantage. He could use these extensions as weapons as well. To be put in simple words, he could fight a dozen of people at once, and when someone was at the farthest distance from him, he could simply use these extensions to kill that enemy, or even pull it closer to Khan. When someone tried to attack him from behind, these extensions with sharp pointy ends could simply kill the enemy. These extensions were more like his extra arms now. After being content with the results, Khan let out a satisfied smile, but he didn't touch the core of the Pethrol to eat it. Rather, he had some other plans. "Ronin," he called out the rogue subordinate. Khan had a suitable candidate to merge with this floor boss, because eventually his generals were going to play a vital role for him in the future. Quality was sometimes far important than quantity. Ronin was going to lead Khan's army of assassins one day if Khan decided so, and the subordinate had proved itself useful from time to time, so it was about time it got the reward it deserved. Khan used the Synthesis Divine ability and used 20 A-rank monster cores to mix the floor boss's body with over 10 nymphs to create a subordinate that had evolution skill unlocked. And to bridge the gap between species rank, since Ronin was of rare rank while the floor boss was of lord rank, he used another 15 A-rank cores for better results. After spending 2 hours, the evolution was finally done. A black mist surrounded the newly upgraded Ronin, and his face turned similar to the monster boss, but his eyes had turned completely green. He retained his humanoid appearance but is now 3 meters tall. There were multiple black whip-like extensions coming from his back. Khan quickly took out 2 epic rank daggers and gave a set of black leather light armor, a coat, shoes, and accessories that fitted the new body perfectly. After this evolution, Ronin was now a lord rank subordinate just like Omega Blackwolf Oliver. But after inheriting the hallucinogenic toxin and fog skill along with the extensions, he was far more lethal as an assassin-class fighter. He could now take on dozens of people just by himself very efficiently if he wanted. As for what's next, Khan already had decided that he'd test the new skills tonight, not as himself, but as Azrael. Khan returned to his bungalow after clearing out the 12th floor. He was inwardly excited to test out his newly gained skills and abilities, and what best would serve as a target practice other than the scum of the society who had their hands bloodied with innocent lives. It had been quite some time since the Angel of Death made his appearance to the public because Khan had been busy with various things lately, and he also had no need to keep up the act of this warrior of justice any longer. After having his dinner at night, Khan returned to his temporary bedroom and took a small book out of his space ring. It was one of the intel books the Snakekin had given him, and Khan had been using these criminals to create a reputation for his other persona while he used it as the cover to eliminate the people mentioned in his contract. But since the contract was now nulled, his other identity no longer proved useful. But because of these new abilities he gained today, he required live targets in order to get familiar with them. Khan checked through the list of the names by now. Around 90% of them were crossed from the list. Around 50 names had been crossed from the list and nearly a dozen were left. "Well, I'll at least get to finish one book out of the 3, he said, and started reading the leftover names and their details mentioned in the book. He planned to clear out this book first before giving his other persona a full-time rest. As the midnight moon shone brightly in the sky, Khan left his place under the soothing light. He was now accustomed to using the best and shortest ways to reach the different parts of the city. He was now wearing a dark gray attire with a hood and high-quality chest armor, pauldrons, gauntlets, and a metallic belt that covered his entire waist, just to give himself a look of a legendary assassin named Ezio Auditore da Firenze. During his travel, he saw multiple places where the city guards were patrolling the streets in groups. Idiots. They still haven't learned that they should be protecting all the criminals they left roaming free if they want to catch me. Spoke Khan to himself as he swiftly passed through various streets. Khan climbed on top of a tall tower using the new extensions as his own grappling gun, gazing at the city filled with lamplights and magical street lights. He stood solemnly as the wind fluttered his robes as the white moon behind him appeared to be enlarged like a full moon. Khan let out a sophisticated sigh as he looked at the city life that was going about their way in hurdles. He finally spoke in response to the glimmering nightlife. We work in the dark to serve the light. Author, you're all men of culture, you know the rest. Nothing is true, everything is permitted, said Khan and jumped down with his head and upper body facing towards the ground, taking a leap of faith. Before his body could touch the ground, he disappeared using Shadow Walk and chose one of the streets to mix into and go for his first target. In a tavern full of bustling crowd and waiters bringing everyone their ordered foods, many people were drinking and eating to their heart's content. Amongst one of such groups, a strong and muscular elf gulped down the entire glass in one go. Unlike the stories Khan read on Earth, although elves had a high affinity to magic, they were not averse to using other professions and fighting trades. The majority of the elves he had come to see so far were actually physical class fighters and had physique as per their fields required them to be. They weren't some weak and frail humans with pointy ears like depicted in almost all the mangas and novels he read in his previous life. Daminal, your appetite for booze will even give the dwarves a sense of competitiveness. Haha, laughed a demonkin and ordered for more. Only if I could get a nice woman in my arms for the night, it would be worth it, said the elf as he licked his lips. At this response, the demonkin's face turned somber. Don't cause trouble. You're still under suspicion by the law enforcement hall. Don't give them a chance to catch you red-handed. We can't always pay our way through, said the demonkin. Yeah, I'll be careful. I'm off to sleep. See you tomorrow, said Daminal and left the tavern. But unbeknownst to him, there was a dark figure watching and hearing his every word from a distance far away. The elf walked across streets and wandered around as if looking for something. Just then, the muscular elf went behind a dark alley, chasing after a human girl who seemed to be exhausted after a day's work. A few seconds later, there was a muffled scream. Ah, who are you? Let me go, shouted the girl, but her voice was quickly subdued as the elf put his hand on her mouth, and since no one was present there, her pleas for help didn't reach anyone. Don't make a noise if you still want to live, said the elf as he put a knife on the girl's throat. I'm not asking for much. I only want to have some good time, he said and licked the girl's neck and grabbed her bosom. The girl shuddered in fear and tried to struggle by flexing her arms, trying to push her assaulter. But to no avail, her frail body could not put any resistance to the muscular elf. Don't worry, I'll be gentle, whispered the elf with a lecherous and creepy look in his eyes. He pushed the girl against a wall, started pulling her clothes, trying to tear them out. Suddenly, a ghostly and grim voice resounded as a dark hooded figure appeared behind the elf who was trying to **e the girl. Daminal Olstrenvac. You have failed this city. The elven man opened his eyes. A sudden pain hit his senses as he felt a big bump on his head. He couldn't make sense of what was happening. And most importantly, he felt like his legs were tied by something, and as soon as his vision became clear, he screamed loudly in fear. Because at this moment, he was indeed hanging upside down, on top of a tower. Let me down, he shouted in fear, his body flailing around in the air. Very poor choice of words. A grim voice came from his back, and quickly the rope-like thing that had tied his legs loosened its grip. No! Screamed the elven man as his body was thrown down from a nearly 80-meter tall tower, ready to be swatted in the ground. But at the same time, another hooded figure, clad in gray robes, had jumped down with him and was descending down, albeit more organized and in proper form. "Save me!" shouted the elven man from the top of his lungs. "So dramatic," said the hooded figure, and 4 black extensions came from behind his back. 2 of them quickly grabbed and rounded up the elf, while the other 2 quickly stabbed themselves in the building's walls. The elf, who was nearly swatted to the ground, found his body suspended in the air again, and the figure who bound him was hanging in between these 4 extensions. He raised his hands upwards, and they too turned into similar extension, pulling both the bodies upwards. When they finally reached the top of the tower again, the fear-stricken elf finally had a clear view of this ghostly figure. Tensile strength is great, ductility and malleability are also high. I wouldn't have any problem even when blocking arrows using this, spoke the hooded man as he folded his hands and looked to be thinking about something. The extensions are strong enough. I can hold his entire body in the air while standing on my 2 feet without losing any balance. So useful, spoke Khan as he felt satisfied with the newly gained ability. "Now let's test the fear toxin," said Khan, and a spray of white fog came from his hands and reached the elf's face, who was muffling under the grasp of these fleshy extensions. Just a dozen seconds later, he saw Azrael's face again. But this time, the face appeared inhuman, with nothing but a black skull with brightly burning red eyes as if they were on fire. The entire body of the hooded man in front of him felt like it was turning bigger and grimmer as the seconds passed by, and all the elf saw was a dark demonic figure looking down on him, as if looking at an insignificant being. "You! Who are you?" asked the elf, who was tied up by these extensions, his face full of horrors. "I know many cases about women, including elves, goblins, humans, and beastmen, and who knows how many victims are not recorded. I wonder why you are not in prison yet," the hooded man said. "Let me go. I don't want to die." "I'll do anything you want," pleaded the muscular elf. "Alcina Sikkim. The name rings any bells?" asked the hooded figure. "You. How do you know that?" asked the elf with an ashen expression on his face. "You are *ped that 13-year-old girl, and when she refused to keep quiet about it, you killed her and threw her body in the gutter. Well, that's only one of your victims that I've come to know. I'm sure there are many innocent women you've killed and destroyed the lives of," said the hooded figure in a judgmental tone. "Don't tell me. You're Azrael?" asked the elf in a ghastly tone. "Yes. Now tell me. How do you wish to die?" spoke the hooded man. "Azrael, I'm giving you 3 options. 1. Get your limbs torn in pieces. 2. Getting skinned alive. And 3. I put holes in your body one by one till you die from excessive bleeding. I'm in a good mood today, so I'll let you choose," said Khan in his Azrael voice. "No. Let me go. I'll pay you with all the money I have. I promise I won't do it again," shouted the elf in a fearful tone. "Third it is," said Khan. "Stab." The elf's shoulder was stabbed by the spear-like ends of the fleshly extension that were coming out of Khan's back. "Argh!" wailed the man in pain as blood started pouring down from the wound. "You like using that thing to show your supremacy on innocent women via young girls, don't you?" asked Azrael as a small pike came out from his palm, and he quickly stabbed the man in the crotch. "Mrahea!" cried the elf in pain as he lost his ability to reproduce in this life. But Khan didn't just stop there. One by one, he stabbed the elven male in his arms, his thighs, then his abdomen using the tendril-like extensions. He twisted them inside the elf's body to give him even more horrendous experience, as if the decree of the heavens was punishing the elf for all his sins. Multiple wounds inside the elf's body bled buckets of blood, and the elf lost his consciousness after suffering through the immeasurable pain. Ugh! So disappointing. How am I going to test these abilities if these bastards keep passing out so soon? Spoke Khan in a dejected tone. Well, it's a good thing that this city has no lack of lowlives, declared Khan, and tore the elf's body from limbs and hung it on top of the tower. Well, this is my last night as Azrael, so let's clean up this city as much as I can, spoke Khan as he jumped from the top of the tower and disappeared in the darkness of the night. Tonight, there was going to be another massacre in the city that would make the name of Azrael put fear in the hearts of all the criminals. Tonight, he would gain a new title, Azrael, the Adjudicator. Once again, the Flavit city awoke in the morning filled with terrified screams as multiple streets were now crowded with masses throughout the entire perimeter. All the 4 gates of the city that had thousands of people exit and enter through were now in shambles because suddenly, the influx in people that were leaving the city for good had risen. And the reason being none other than Azrael, the Adjudicator, because last night, he had displayed such ruthlessness that even the most experienced fighters who had been through many wars would find it scary and no different than an actual battlefield. Unlike what Azrael had done before, where he only put a pike through the bodies of the criminals and pinned them on a wall. This time, the display of cruelty had put fear in even those who supported his actions and called him a hero. Because the criminals that were now pinned on the street walls were no longer hung there in a single piece. Rather, their body parts were spread out throughout the city while blood leaked out of them, and the reeking atmosphere left many onlookers shuddering in fear. If one street had the head of one of Azrael's victims, the other street walls would have his legs or arms, another will have his fingers, while the last one would host the splattered and torn-up intestines. The mangled body parts covered in blood were spread throughout the city, and not a single populated zone was left an exception to it. This was by far Azrael's biggest declaration of war on the criminals and corrupted that lived in the city. All of these streets had blood-painted walls with words written in blood that were the main cause why anyone who ever committed a heinous crime would feel like looking the death in its eyes. I see all. I observe all. And I know all your crimes. No evil shall go unpunished because I, Azrael, the Adjudicator, is always watching. He was no longer a hero of justice or someone who fought for the little guy. No, he was basically declaring himself to be the law itself. The reason why he went to such extreme measures was because he knew that people would easily forget no matter how many criminals he killed and punished for their crimes. And eventually, the majority of the populace who only heard the name of Azrael only in gossips and rumors would come to even deny his existence. Sooner or later, he was going to leave this place and his name and deeds would fade in history. People would still commit crimes in the dark alleys. Innocents would be thrashed and trampled upon by the rich and powerful, and all the efforts he put in creating his persona of Azrael would have no meaning left to it. If he wanted to leave a mark in the history of this city, he had to not only kill these criminals, but also make the masses fear him. Otherwise, the same cycle would repeat and that would make no difference. For Khan, it was no longer about using these killings as a means to kill the people in his contract, but rather about the legacy he would leave. Because a fearful man followed rules far better than one with freedom, even though no one served any religion or any god in Rocco's empire. Azrael had put the fear of God in all the citizens of this city. Khan, the main culprit of this chaos, woke up merrily in the noon after yesterday's hectic work and simply enjoyed the view outside of his house. He was now done playing the role of a warrior of justice and the judge, jury, and executioner. His short career was now over because he had to focus his time and energy on various things. He wasn't going to be complacent and enjoy whatever little reputation and strength he had in his hands. Complacency breeds pestilence that stops your growth and will eventually cause your downfall. He took a bath and had Jerome bring his lunch. "Sir, these are your letters for today. I think you should respond to at least a few of them. Some even come from noble clans who wish to have you join their ranks," said Jerome as he unloaded a whole bag of letters on the table. These were all the letters and invitations Khan was receiving ever since his popularity rose with the incidents with the Minotaur bodies, and later it reached its peak with him beating the noble heirs at the banquet. Khan, who barely had any time to spare these days, didn't want to waste it on entertaining these self-proclaimed high-class people and their useless notions. He had no need or the will to join hands with any of the forces. If it was some one-time deal, he would do it, but making any commitment and joining any factions wasn't something he wanted to get entangled in. He had no interest in playing a feudal politics game in the small place that was on the edge of the empire. "Tell them I'm unavailable for few days and won't be able to reply," replied Khan as he enjoyed his fulfilling meal. It was about time he hunted the next floor boss. Khan visited the Brahmner dungeon again, simply because it was the closest one to the city and apparently had the highest number of dungeon floors. just that the people who came here were too many, so there were not many monsters to hunt on upper floors. Only if you could fight and survive on the lower floors, then it'd be worth it. Khan reached the 13th floor this time and entered through the gates. His senses were all on alert as he searched for the enemies on this floor, but couldn't find any living thing other than the trees and plants on this dense and rocky valley. Even his hunter's intent hadn't picked up any heat signature or a trail of any living soul. Khan couldn't help but think in puzzlement. Has this floor been abandoned? Khan wandered around the entire 13th floor of this dungeon, but still failed to find any enemies or the floor boss despite spending a few hours with all his abilities activated. Where the hell is it? Shouted Khan in an annoyed tone, because no way that the floor boss could leave the floor. If it did, there would be a mayhem outside of the dungeon, and maybe the city would be at war, because the higher the floors, the stronger the bosses were. He looked around the trees and rocky valleys from time to time, but still couldn't find anything that would look like a monster or any being that would appear to be an inhabitant of this floor. I guess that leaves me no choice. Everyone out! Commanded Khan. All of his subordinates jumped out from his shadow one by one. Legion, go look for enemies. Generals, attack anything you find suspicious, and Omega. Smash! Said Khan as he pointed his forefinger at Omega. Omega let out a smirk and ran in the opposite direction. What ensued very soon was multiple places on this dungeon floor getting blown up, caved in, giants' peaks and boulders getting shattered, while the dense treelines put on fires, while the smoke from the burnt wood spread on this floor, which nearly had a perimeter of 10 kilometers. Khan was literally smoking the floor boss out of its hiding. After he too joined the shindig, the property damage raised significantly because he had the highest mana and attack range, whether it was sword or magic spells. After half an hour, suddenly Omega engaged in a battle, and Khan was quickly notified via hive mind skill. He finally saw the floor boss through the shared vision as he and the rest of the subordinates were running towards the ongoing battle. Khan was stupefied after looking at the boss. Omega, who was fighting it, was having a hard time to even land a proper blow at it, whether it was melee and ranged attacks. And the main reason being that the floor boss had no proper body form. Sometimes it turned into the shape of a boulder, and the next second it turned into limb-like structures that avoided the attacks extremely well. It was like a jelly that was changing its size and shapes without any problems. As Khan reached the midway to the battleground, he faltered in his footsteps after he saw something that made him drop his jaw on the ground. The floor boss had turned into Omega. Khan couldn't believe his eyes as he saw a black Leakin who looked identical to Omega in every aspect. Whether it was the height, the fur, or the claws, there wasn't a difference in any way. If Khan didn't have the mind connection with his commander, he too would have failed to differentiate between the real Omega and the fake one. Omega was enraged to the core after he saw the floor boss imitating him in every way. It had a smug grin on its expression as it evaded his attacks from time to time and made mocking gestures. It has high sentience, and it knows how to goad an enemy into exhausting themselves by provoking them. Khan thought and ordered all of his subordinates to stop their charge towards the battleground. The floor boss clearly didn't know how many enemies were surrounding it. Keep it busy. He ordered Omega as a viable plan hatched in his mind. After watching the floor boss via Omega, Khan quickly understood why he failed to find the floor boss till now despite spending hours wandering around the floor like an idiot. Because this floor boss could shapeshift into objects and even living beings. And to make it even more deadly, it could also completely mask its presence so well that even his survival instinct and hunter's intent that were already twice more effective than before ever since he broke into the Grandmaster rank couldn't find it. No wonder it had completely mixed into the environment without leaving a trace. And if not for Khan getting pissed off and ordering his subordinates to destroy the places on this floor, he would have never found it in the first place. If this was Khan before he faced the floor boss from the 12th floor and absorbed its abilities, he wasn't confident that he would even be able to fight this floor boss. The opponent was indeed very smart and tactful from what Khan saw. He ordered his legion and 6 generals to surround the battlefield from corners without coming in sight. He exclusively ordered Oliver to take the high ground and be ready to attack if the shape-shifting floor boss decided to take the form of something that could fly in order to run away from the battle. At this moment, however, Omega was being pushed back by the monster with the same physical attacks as the former and mimicking his attack pattern. A true nightmare for those who hunted alone and in groups. Because no matter what, this floor boss could take the shape of a random object and you wouldn't even notice. If in groups, it could take the appearance of your allies and then kill you when you weren't looking. Khan trembled in amazement after he noticed how horrifyingly strong this floor boss was. It was one thing if you could copy someone's appearance. But it was another thing if you could fight the opponent using the same attacks and fighting style as them. The 12th floor boss only looked terrifying. But this guy is the actual bastard you should be afraid of, spoke Khan to himself as he finally prepared a plan to take down this floor boss. Since its biggest advantage in a fight was to shapeshift into the enemy and copy their fighting style in time. Khan was certain that the monster was a highly intelligent being to adapt so quickly in a battle. But what if the boss lost its ability to think properly and had too many enemies that it couldn't even copy enough of them? Because soon, the floor boss was going to live inside a nightmare. And that nightmare would be none other Khan. Omega faced off against the floor boss by himself as Khan entered in stealth. Thankfully, the fight was happening in an area with long and broad trees, so there was no lack of shadows for him to hide inside using Shadow Walk. Even though Omega was currently being defensive and was pushed back by the floor boss who had taken the same form as him, he still adhered to Khan's instructions and kept the boss engaged. Khan, on the other hand, started shifting from one place to another and took a cover behind tree trunks and released the fear toxin from his hands. But he didn't stop at just one place. He didn't want to give the floor boss any escape route, so he filled various places with his toxin mist and covered the entire area out of the battlefield in a circle. And in this encircled area, he placed his lower-tier subordinates as the 6 generals hid in the inner areas not far from the ongoing battle. After completely filling this middle area with the fog, Khan finally decided that it was about time the floor boss understood what true fear looked like. Using the Shadow Walk, he appeared behind the boss and released his fear toxin at full capacity, as if a cloud had descended straight from the sky on this battleground. Only then did the floor boss finally notice that something was amiss and looked around its surrounding, only to find a visible white fog and somehow feeling its senses becoming dull. When it looked back on its opponent, it was surprised to see how its enemy had completely disappeared from the sight without even making a sound. It quickly changed its form and transformed into a blue and large-winged creature that resembled a lot to the pterosaurs, the flying bird-like dinosaurs, but with feathers and a long tail. The floor boss was now 5 meters in height and quickly spanned its wings to take off and look at the surrounding. Shoot! Just as the newly transformed boss took off and flew 15 meters above the ground, a metal-like pike pierced its right wing and soon another one was shot at the boss. Krah! The boss fell on the ground and screeched in agony as the wings started to bleed. It quickly changed its form into a 4-legged creature with scaly skin on its body, its head resembling imps and legs similar to clawed wolves. Just then, another burst of the white smog came to its face and the boss inhaled a big breath of this fog. Swoosh! The floor boss heard a voice and quickly turned its back, looking for the source of the noise. Then suddenly, a black figure passed behind its back and disappeared before the boss could even turn around. It transformed into a horned snake and slithered across the trees after getting a sense of fear from the surrounding noises. Just then, it saw a group of giant monsters walking towards it. Each figure was as tall as a 20-meter house, their eyes burning red, and the biggest of them was a 40-meter-tall humanoid monster with a giant shield and axe in its hand. Thud! 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 The floor boss, whose senses were weakening as time passed, shuddered in fear for the first time in its life. It quickly ran away from the giant monsters and took the left side, only to find an army of spider-like creatures swarming in the group of hundreds, their eyes prying at the boss as if they wanted to dissect it alive. When it slithered in the other direction, it saw a giant hooded figure with a black staff in its hand, and a ginormous fireball that looked like a miniature sun was hovering around this hooded figure. The floor boss felt like it was nothing but a tiny being and ran for its life. It transformed into a bird-like creature again, but before it could even take off, its wings were shot and pinned to the ground from a long and 8-legged figure with its bright yellow eyes staring back at it. The sight terrified the boss, and it transformed into a two-legged ape-like creature who jumped extremely fast among the trees, only to face its previous enemy, Omega. But unlike the previous encounter, Omega was now 50 meters tall. Various parts on his body appeared to be covered in fiery patterns, and the eyes felt like they would burn anything to the ground. His claws now looked far longer and sharper that could cut down the boss in a single swing. The boss was completely horrified and lost the balance of its body on the spot. The fog had almost blurred its sight, and its body was feeling numb from the fear alone. Kjarg, roar, screech. Multiple blood-curdling noises resounded in this tree line as the enemies had surrounded the floor boss from all the sides. The boss screeched and roared in a deafening voice as if trying to warn the enemies. But to no avail, the hundreds of gigantic figures kept walking towards it. After being scared witless, the floor boss finally took its real form for the first time. A dark gray scaled four-legged creature with a mouth made of a tortoise beak with teeth as sharp as a crocodile. The back was hunched but covered in stone-like skin. The entire figure was around 5 meters tall, much smaller than any of the forms it had taken before. Now covering in fear, it had left down all its defenses, hoping that the nightmare in front of it would stop. Before its eyes, another black figure emerged from the shadows, and the density of this fog increased twice than before. The floor boss could no longer think anything rationally and wailed in fear. The new figure seemed to be humanoid and walked towards the creature that was lying on the ground, trembling in fear. The size of the figure rose by dozens of meters with every step it took. In his hands was a gigantic sword that could cut a tall peak in half with a single swing. As this new figure stopped right in front of the boss, the monster let out a whimper, begging to be spared in its own way. But the gigantic figure didn't show any hint of mercy on his face and pierced his sword right through the floor boss's head. In its final moments, the floor boss finally saw the truth behind its death. Because there were no gigantic creatures. There was no army of hundreds and thousands surrounding it. Rather, it was only a dozen of small-time monsters that it could easily kill by itself. But the most shocking sight was the true form of the one that had killed it. It was the shortest, most threatless-looking human. The floor boss finally closed its eyes in disbelief as the horrifying nightmare finally ended. Khan put his hands on the dead body of the floor boss. He felt like patting himself on the shoulders for how tactfully he took out this floor boss. If not for his extremely well-thought planning such as closing all escape routes, removing the option to fly and then simply scaring down the boss to a state where even he appeared as an immense threat to the monster and simply stood rooted to the spot as Khan ended its life. It was no different than the highly intelligent and experienced boss allowing itself to be killed. Khan thanked the previous floor boss in his head again for giving such a useful skill. Because even with all of his strength, his small army and even his lord-rank subordinates, he really wouldn't have been able to kill the boss so efficiently. The fear toxin was by far one of his most effective skills, just like the Somir Scales poison acid Va extensions. Truly worth investing in. If he could find monsters and skills that could improve its potency and effectiveness, it'd be worth going through the trouble. He was done absorbing the skills and bloodline of this floor boss in 40 minutes. Unlike many of the monsters he had absorbed the bloodlines of, this time the whole body and blood was completely absorbed by Khan, leaving nothing but an empty husk of bones under the skin. Ding! Congratulations to the host for finding an S-rank metamorphosis bloodline. Current bloodline purity, 68%. The host must eat Va absorb the core of the Utherkyrus to complete this bloodline. A sudden notification sounded in his head, informing him about the monster boss. What? A metamorphosis bloodline? Khan was gobsmacked after the notification, because never in his wildest dream did he think of finding the almost rare and unique metamorphosis bloodline inside this dungeon. From his knowledge, only Dopplers who were a rare type of demi-humans had this type of bloodline from the books about different inhabitants and species of this empire he read in his free time. But even those had a very low purity in bloodline, and at best, they could take the form of another humanoid species after going through the arduous trouble of shedding their skin and having their bones cracked to match the shape of their targets. If Khan wanted that bloodline, he'd have to kill at least 200 Dopplers that were already hard to find. But even then, he'd get a B-rank bloodline at best. Not the S-rank bloodline that this floor boss had just gifted him. Khan bowed in respect to the deceased Uthraquirus. "Thank you for your sacrifice," he said, and pulled out the blue core from the now dried-out heart. "So it was a Lord rank boss as well," spoke Khan, as monsters who were of Lord rank and comparable to Grandmaster humanoid species fighters had blue cores, unlike the latter who had golden cores. Khan gulped down the big lemon-sized core and sat on the ground in his usual Lotus Buddha position whenever he absorbed high-grade monster cores. He always found his mind calm and able to comprehend the surge in strength in that position. Ding! Bloodline absorption complete. Current bloodline purity, 100%. The host has acquired the following abilities: VA skills. Metamorphosis allows the host to transform into beings and creatures the host has a complete bloodline of without any delay or harm done to the original body. However, the host must learn to function and move in these different forms by himself. Bloodline merge allows the host to mix different physical and magical traits of different bloodlines the host is already in possession of. The host must possess a significant portion of bloodlines and physical skills for them to merge together. Note: since the different physical VA magical traits of the different bloodlines will put a huge strain on the host's body after using them to merge, the activation span of the skill is short. Current time limit, 15 minutes. The host is advised to absorb even higher rank metamorphosis bloodlines to overcome these restrictions, replied the system in its usual robotic voice. Khan was elated after hearing this message, because this was no different than giving himself the biggest advantage he had whether it came to fighting, if he had to hide himself, doing a recon, or even infiltrate inside a place. As long as he had met the conditions of 100% bloodline purity, he could transform himself into any creature he wanted. This ability clearly had opened many doors for him, because if he were to travel into a place inhabited by a particular race or species, he would have no problem mixing in with them, let it be elves, dwarves, and maybe even sea folks. This was far better than any shape-shifting ability where you'd be restricted by many things such as the types of shapes your body allowed you to take or have physical traits that would restrict the kind of species you could imitate. And the biggest advantage was that if he obtained the full bloodline of some type of rare monster or even a dragon, for example, he would be able to transform himself into them. Although he would need a higher bloodline like a mythical rank metamorphosis bloodline for it to be successful. This was still a gate that opened hundreds of possibilities for him. And the bloodline merge was also another handy and useful ability, even though it had a short time of 15 minutes only. He could select the best traits of the bloodlines he had and take a form that would be an amalgamation of these OP physical and magical traits and skills. To put the cherry on top, Khan also noticed that his level went by 5 levels and now he was level 70. This was indeed an immensely fortunate harvest. Muhoho. Ha 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 ha. Khan did his usual Joker laugh as he stared at the sky with nothing but joy and happiness in his eyes. Has Master gone senile again? Asked Ronin to his fellow subordinates. What do you mean? Questioned Omega. I'm usually on the lookout when Master is doing something important. So whenever he gets something useful or precious, he always laughs like this, replied Ronin. Unbeknownst to Khan, all the subordinates that had reached the Lord rank after the evolution had formed their own consciousness and will. Although they were still programmed to follow Khan's every order, they could think by themselves and even converse with each other with the same hive mind skill that he used to talk with them. So the sayings are true. When you search for the copper, you might as well find gold, said Khan, and decided to leave the dungeon after today's extremely rewarding hunt. Now he was going to spend some time practicing and experimenting with this metamorphosis ability for some time. This was definitely one of his biggest hauls ever. Little did Khan knew that one day this ability would change his life. The next morning after Khan awoke from his sleep, he started his weapons training again. Recently, he didn't have enough time to practice, but it clearly hadn't skipped his mind. No matter how the blessings from the war deity helped him raise his mastery and perfect his techniques easily, he'd still get rusty if he didn't practice with them in routines. Only a fool would get complacent with their cheat codes and forget to even train the basics of the fighting skills. He wasn't inside some fictional story where once you learn a skill, You don't have to work hard to perfect it or take it to a new level for your entire life. His only advantage was that the blessings allowed him to quickly comprehend the various battle techniques and skills far faster than anyone else. But that didn't mean that he'd always stay proficient in them without performing them for a long time. Because even Grandmaster rank fighters still train themselves with their weapons in order to reach new heights and break into a higher rank. That was exactly what made them so different exceptional from millions of people. After his morning training session ended, he followed his usual routine of breakfast, ignoring the letters from rich businessmen and nobles alike, then spending his time reading a few informative books related to the demographics and geography of the world he was now living in. He wasn't going to be an ignorant idiot like some childish protagonist of a book who randomly traveled to places without even gathering enough information about that place, such as its natives, the culture they follow, and what's the most important thing to know about that region. And because he didn't have a know-it-all guide or a companion with him, he had to learn these things by himself so he wouldn't wander off in a wrong place or lose the track of where he was. During the noon, when he was finally alone, he started practicing the new metamorphosis ability. He took off all of his clothes and started to change his form from one species to another. In the beginning, he stumbled in his footsteps as he wasn't used to walking on hind legs of a kobold or a minotaur, and nor did he have any experience in walking on 3 legs like a nymph. After spending hours practicing from one form to another and getting used to them, Khan finally heaved a sigh of relief. And then he shifted to Bloodline Merge skill. Initially, Khan only thought that he couldn't use skills that were Bloodline exclusive, but to his surprise, the abilities he already had learned without a 100% pure Bloodline were also available. To summarize, Metamorphosis allowed him to change only in the creatures he had absorbed the 100% pure Bloodline of, while Bloodline Merge allowed him to mix in skills and physical traits he already had acquired even if he didn't have the 100% purity in those respective species and bloodlines. In the first few tries, he could only merge 2 to 3 bloodline skills at best, and his highest activation time was 4 minutes. This skill indeed needed a lot of practice and experiments done with it. Otherwise, it'd be nothing but a forgotten book on the shelf. Somewhere at this same moment, a fight occurred inside a huge merchant shop. "Give them back. These are ours, you thieves, or no one is leaving this building alive," shouted a man. A group of 20 adventurers were causing a commotion inside a well-established shop that sold weapons, equipments, and even some rare materials harvested from the monsters. These adventurers had broken few tables and glass shelves that held the different products. A group of men walked from inside of the building to confront these hooligans that were doing the property damage. But even they felt a sense of fear because the guards that were protecting them were few in numbers compared to these people. "What's the meaning of this?" asked an elderly old man who had a long and white beard. The elderly was very familiar to Khan. It was none other than the old Merchant Association president, Nicola. And the huge and well-established settlement was none other than the same Black Griffin merchant shop where Khan had previously bought all his gear and equipment from. "President, these people claim that the goods we're selling actually belong to them and want them back. They're even threatening to burn down our shop if we don't comply," shouted the Demonkin manager. The one who previously escorted Khan during his shopping after Khan handed down a letter written by Elenev. While all this commotion happened, Khan was busy experimenting with his new skills, and he finally stopped after the sunset was on the way. He thought about taking a small stroll across the city and visit his favorite restaurant where they sold that aromatic herbal tea. He kind of missed that exquisite and soul-soothing tea. But when he left his bungalow and walked nearly half a mile, he heard a commotion coming from the nearby street. Khan, whose senses and eyesight was far keener than any other normal human being because of his hunter's intent. He quickly found the cause of this noise and moved towards the direction. But as soon as he gazed at the center of the commotion, he faltered in his steps and stood rooted on the spot. Just a half-mile away from him, there was a big oak-like tree on the side of the street, and on that tree a body was hanged. Khan quickly ran towards the location with all his might and at his full speed. "Get out of the way!" roared Khan towards the people that were encircling this tree, standing as bystanders. As soon as his loud roar reached their ears, some people started making a way for him. It wasn't a request but more like an order. Khan jumped and leaped across the crowd for nearly 10 meters and landed right beneath the tree. He looked at the slim and lifeless body that was hung from the tree branches. "No, this can't be happening," said Khan with a ghastly and ashen face. He quickly took out a dagger from his space ring and cut down the rope. Slowly taking down the body, Khan held the slim body in his arms and gazed at the fear-stricken and pale face of the corpse. It was someone Khan knew very well ever since he came out of the forest. The body he held in his arms belonged to a young woman with long red hair. She appeared no older than himself. The deceased young woman was none other than Jessica. Khan couldn't believe what was happening in front of him as he held Jessica's cold body in his arms. He vividly remembered how this archer girl from the Diamond Adventurer group was one of the people he saved in the forest from those bandits, and also how he saved her again from those kobolds. He himself had taken her to the clinic and looked after this woman for a time being, so he had a sense of familiarity with her. He had a good impression of Jessica because even when she was surrounded by enemies, instead of cowering in fear or giving in to fate, she always fought fiercely with all of her strength till the last moment. He noticed that the once extremely beautiful and charming face of this girl was now all bruised up. Her fingernails were pulled out and there were multiple cuts on her wrists. The lively face of this redhead was now pale white as if she had lost a lot of blood. Jessica was tortured to death. Khan picked her body in his arms and started walking towards his house. "Hey, you stop!" Just then a couple of city guards walked towards the scene and saw Khan taking the dead body with him. However, Khan wasn't in the mood to do any explaining or reasoning with the guards or the onlookers. He activated war dominance and walked with a lifeless expression on his face. The extremely heavy and dense pressure from his aura put all the onlookers and the guards on the ground, majority of them falling unconscious in seconds. "Stop, you bastard!" shouted the guard. "Wait, don't you know who that is?" asked the other guards as they were both kneeling on the ground under that suppressing pressure. "Who?" "That's Khan, the one who killed the Minotaurs by himself and is rumored to be a Grandmaster swordsman," said the other guard. But before the first guard could continue, the second one stopped him. "We will report this to higher-ups. He's not someone we can provoke," said the other guard. Khan returned to his bungalow and placed Jessica on the sofa in a sleeping position. He activated his hunter's intent and started checking her body for any clues he could find. With this skill, Khan's senses were at their peak and he noticed multiple whip marks, some marks made by being hit with a bludgeoning weapon and stab wounds on her thighs and calves. Whoever did it took their time and wanted to interrogate her, concluded Khan after checking the body. He started checking her pockets and her small pouch that was attached to her belt. Yet he found nothing. Just as he was about to stop, his senses picked up a round metal object. He pulled it out from the back of her belt where it was deliberately hidden. "Jerome, bring me something to cover her up and prepare for a funeral," he shouted and ordered Jerome, his housekeeper. "Yes, sir. I'll contact the morgue," said Jerome after he brought white sheets and left the house. He too was baffled after Khan suddenly brought up a dead body in the house, but he knew it wasn't his place to meddle in or ask questions given the furious look his employer had on the face. Khan gently picked up her head and placed a soft kiss on her forehead. "I'm sorry. You got mixed into all of this because of me," spoke Khan as small tear droplets came from his eyes, because the round metal object he found was something familiar to him. It was an emblem which he had seen previously during his dungeon hunts. The Scarlet Lion Adventurer Guild. Khan now had hints for the cause of Jessica's death. It was caused by the people of this guild, and as for the reason, he already understood what it was as he gazed at the space ring in his hands. They wanted the ring. The one which Khan had picked up after their team was wiped out by the silver kobold and later landed in his hands. The materials and weapons inside the ring indeed cost a fortune, and Khan had greatly benefited from selling just half of these to Nicola. What these people wanted was the ring and everything in it. And as for why they tortured Jessica, because they must have found out that she was the sole survivor of that massacre. but he had no idea how did her body end up right exactly in front of the neighborhood main street where he lived. Khan could only conclude this much based on what he found logical and made sense. He would find the whole truth sooner or later. "It's all because of me. I'm the one responsible for her death," shouted Khan in regret as he clearly understood that it was because of him that an innocent person like Jessica died as collateral damage. He grabbed the nearby chair in a fit of rage and threw it on the wall. His wrathful gaze landed on the metal emblem as he clutched it in his hand and broke it in half. The guilt welled up in his heart as he made a resolute vow to himself at this moment. "They're going to pay. They're all going to pay. Every single one of them," declared Khan as his eyes filled with rage and his violent aura burst out of his body. He covered her body under the white sheets and started wearing his gear for hunting. There was no more need to hide this anymore. Their biggest mistake was they messed with him after he had achieved his current strength. So anyone who was involved in Jessica's murder was going to experience the living hell. Khan suited up in his usual attire and left to find the main headquarters of the Scarlet Lion Guild. Khan had decided that whoever it was, he would inflict pain 10 times more than what Jessica had endured before she died miserably, scared and alone. After spending half an hour to find the location, Khan kicked the main gates and entered inside. He stared at the people in the main hall and shouted loudly, "Come out, you bastards! I'm here!" As soon as Khan entered and shouted, alarming all the people inside the main hall, he released war dominance at its full capacity. "Arr!" wailed dozens of people as they fell on the ground one by one. Only a few managed to stay awake while the rest fainted on the spot. "Who dares?" An enraged bellow sounded in the hall and dozens of people came running from inside the building. They already had brandished their weapons. "Where's your guildmaster?" asked Khan in a furious tone. "Who the hell do you think you are? Do you think anyone can just come here and order to meet our guildmaster?" spoke a middle-aged wolfkin warrior. "I don't want to kill anyone who's innocent, but I don't have any time or patience. So tell me, where is he, or none of you will walk out of here alive," said Khan and walked in front of this new group, his aura of dominance and chaos increasing with each step. Now that Khan's level had risen, so did the strength of his aura. The new group shuddered in fear as they lost control over their bodies and gave in to this insurmountable pressure. Only 2 of these new group barely managed to hold their ground. "You bastard! You think you can?" Just before the man could even finish, a dark flash passed by him. Thud! A head dropped on the ground and blood sprayed from the body of the man. "Ah!" screamed a woman from the group who was kneeling on the ground. "I said I don't have any time for patience. Do you really want to test me?" asked Khan in his tyrannical voice. You won't get." Stab. A long sword was stabbed right through the throat of this wolfkin as blood gushed out from his neck and the warrior dropped on the ground as Khan pulled out his sword. "You bastards don't understand what I'm saying. Or should I start killing every single one of you one by one?" raged Khan. He was already giving them a lot of leeway by not straight up killing everyone he saw in the hall. He wanted the main party responsible for this, but it didn't mean he would shy away from killing those who didn't cooperate. This was the enemy side, but he was still giving them a fair chance than outright slaughtering people who didn't even know anything about Jessica's murder. "Sintra Dungeon. The guildmaster and all of our top fighters have gone to raid the Sintra Dungeon," shouted the fear-stricken woman as she saw 2 dead bodies of her comrades who were killed just under 5 seconds, while none of them even saw when Khan swung or stabbed his long sword. Author. It's not a Chinese long sword, rather a medieval one like Dante's sword. Rebellion, for example. Khan didn't speak anything in reply and simply dashed out of the building. He already knew about the location of this dungeon from the maps he read. Sintra Dungeon was 15 kilometers away from the north of the city and mainly had a large group of monsters that hunted in hordes like ogres and orcs. So it was visited and raided only by big adventurer teams and elite groups of high-rank fighters. Khan ran across the streets like a swift wind passing by without the care of onlookers. He was even faster than a stallion and far too agile like a wolf. Not even 10 minutes passed by from the moment he exited the city gates and already reached the entrance of this dungeon. "Hey you, do you know on which floor the Scarlet Lion Guild is hunting?" asked Khan to an elven assassin girl who just exited out of the dungeon with her teammates. Those bastards? They're on the 10th floor. They attacked and kicked out many groups from that floor, saying it's their hunting ground. Acting as if they own this dungeon, replied a demonkin girl behind the elven girl in discontent. From now on, they won't do that anymore, said Khan as he entered inside the dungeon. Wait, show me your pass, asked the security guard at the gate. But Khan didn't bother with it since he didn't have a pass for this dungeon. Every single dungeon in this region had separate passes for them to keep the track of people entering inside. Khan simply released his aura, making all the guards rooted on the spot, and entered inside the dungeon. From there, he quickly dashed from the stairs and his figure descended from floor to floor until he finally reached the 10th floor. This floor was a forest area with plenty of open ground. Suddenly, Ronan and Oliver jumped out of his shadow and dashed in Khan's left and right side as he dashed straight. He wasn't going to waste his time searching for them by himself. So to save time, he sent the rogue Va, the ranger subordinates, for a reconnaissance. Just 5 minutes later, Oliver found the group of more than 100 adventurers fighting a horde of tall and broad orcs. The pigs won, not the green ones. Yet the strength in numbers didn't make Khan feel worried or gave a sense of danger in any way as he changed his directions and ran towards the location where the battle was ongoing. This group was already on the verge of finishing their opponents because of the sheer numbers and many fighters having proper coordination in their battle strategy. This was indeed a well-organized group of veteran fighters, capable of taking on even the strong bosses. Yet Khan felt no threat from these 100 or so fighters. It wasn't because he was overconfident, but because he was angry. He wanted to give them pain far worse than what Jessica had to go through. Khan handed over dozens of newly devised bombs to both Ronan and Oliver, the ones he created using his fear toxin ability in form of condensed gas. Soon, this group was going to realize how it felt like going from being the hunter to becoming the prey. Khan didn't waste any more time on planning. He already had a viable and efficient one. He let the Scarlet Lion Guild fight and get exhausted by depleting their strength and their mana so they'll be easy targets to pick off. Just as the group of 100 adventurers was finally done with the battle and let their guard down, Khan sprung in action. Do it! Commanded Khan to Ronan Va Oliver, who were hiding amongst the trees in different directions. One by one, they both started throwing the fear toxin bombs Khan had given them and covered all the sides of this battle formation. The outermost layer of their formation was surrounded by the toxin fog in seconds. What's this? An assassin shouted as soon as he noticed the encircling fog that appeared out of nowhere. Only now did many others also started noticing this fog and put up their guard again. Khan entered into the stealth mode and dashed towards the innermost region of this battle formation that spanned around 500 meters. Before the assassins and archers could pick his presence, he switched to Shadow Walk and proceeded through the shadows of these group members and reached inside the middle of this area. Finally, when the fear toxin had completely become a dense fog and reached this massive group, the effects started showing up when a large number of members suddenly felt their senses dulling and their vision getting blurry. Something's wrong. Everyone alert! Shouted a team captain, and everyone quickly got into their previous team formation. Now all they could do was wait for the enemy to show up. Khan suddenly appeared in the center of this group, surrounded by dozens of people. Hey, who are you? Asked a snakekin young archer. Khan didn't waste any time on introductions and quickly threw all the remaining fear toxin bombs and released a burst of toxin fog from his own hands. Enemy attack! Shouted the snakekin, but it was already late. The sudden eruption of this white fog put the entire team formation in shambles, and the majority lost their sight as everything in front of them was covered by the fog. Everyone, spare nobody! Commanded Khan as his army of subordinates leaped out of his shadow and was released right in the middle of the enemy formation. The supposedly safest place in any battle group was already breached by Khan and his army. Arg! A woman screamed as she was stomped down by a minotaur that jumped out from Khan's shadow. Omega and the 6 generals started attacking the moment their feet landed on the ground. What's happening? Sudden shouts of surprise rang in the surroundings, as people finally noticed that something just appeared in between their ranks, and the fear toxin started showing its effects at the same time. Monsters! Bellowed a mage. We're under attack! roared an old tank. Roar! Blackwell roared and stunned all the enemies in 200 meters surrounding, giving them no chance. Omega's giant figure quickly ran through the 20 or so healers of the group and mowed down their bodies with his shredder claws, instantly cutting 7 of them in half as he ferociously started ripping off people's heads and cut them in half with every single swipe of his claws. Arg! Help! No! Don't kill me! Mommy! Save me! Dozens of screams and wails resounded in just a matter of 20 seconds as the battle formation of the Scarlet Lion Guild broke into shambles under the effect of the fear toxin and Khan's subordinates, causing an onslaught right from the middle of their rank. Some people started running out of the formation after being scared shitless. They tried to run out of this dense fog and get a clear sight as they were suffering from the hallucinations and had lost control over their minds. Swish! 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 Before they could even go far from the outermost layer of the surrounding fog, a volley of arrows rained down on running enemies. Thud! Thwack! Their bodies were pierced right through their armor and defensive equipments as the metal pole-like arrows ended the life of everyone who tried to run away from the battlefield. The attacker being none other than Oliver, who was already positioned on a tall tree on the right side of this formation. He was now using an epic rank bow that Khan gave him after ransacking the Sigurd clan treasury. And with this bow, his accuracy and attack range had risen by twice. The nymphs who were under the lead of Oliver were now crawling and attacking the feet of everyone that was running away for their lives and stabbed their legs and thighs with their own pike-like legs and started ripping out their flesh with their piranha-like teeth. Thump! Stomp! The Minotaurs started stomping on the enemies under their giant feet and squashed multiple people under their giant wooden clubs and maces, instantly turning their kills into a meat paste. Blackwell, their leader, was throwing his giant shield on the enemies and breaking their bodies in a single spin, while his giant battle axe cleaved through multiple tanks and swordsmen, despite them having high-quality armors and shields. Cyril was cutting down bodies with his water and wind blades, burning multiple people alive, piercing them with frost pikes using his mage spells. Jugram swiftly whittled down and cut off the heads of his enemies with the greatsword he had in his hands as the berserker was using all of his attacking abilities on full power. He alone had killed more than a dozen people already. Those who tried to run away from the right side of this formation were single-handedly killed by Ronan, as the rogue subordinate was now a lord rank monster, and after his evolution, he too could use those extensions with spear-like hardva sharp tips. Anyone who faced him simply failed to defend themselves, as the tendrils could change their directions as per his will and pierced through their heads and hearts. And his combat skills with the daggers were completely unmatched. Not a single enemy passed by this subordinate as if he was some sort of dungeon floor boss himself. Screams and wails of fear and agony filled the battlefield as the horrifying display of blood, intestines, innards, and torn-up bodies filled the entire place in a matter of minutes. Khan's use of element of surprise and the effects of the fear toxin on these 100 enemies proved extremely effective. In barely 10 minutes, more than 60 of the members from the guild were now dead and completely oppressed by Khan's army. As for Khan, he didn't even lift his sword, simply walking towards the back of this formation and to the people who seemed like they were in charge. Those who tried to attack him were swiftly killed by the 4 extensions that were coming out of his back. He was walking menacingly towards the leaders of this guild. His vengeful red eyes landed on the members of this adventurer team who were equipped with high-grade armors and weapons. He gazed at them like a war god was looking at tiny insects, his war dominance aura already putting them under immense pressure and scaring the shit out of them. He now stood in front of this group and finally spoke in his tyrannical voice. "You wanted me. Here I am." Khan stood in front of the group fearlessly as his chaotic black and red aura exuded out of his body. The grass on the ground quivered and started shaking under his extremely dense and heavy pressure. "You! Is this your doing? This army of monsters?" asked the man in the center, completely bewildered and shaken to the core as the fear toxin started showing him hallucinations in which an army of hundreds of horrifying and deadly gigantic monsters were now hunting their group. "Thwack! Are you the guildmaster?" asked Khan as he killed another swordsman who charged at him from behind but got stabbed in the throat by the extensions. "You! What kind of monster are you?" shivered the middle-aged man in the center. He still hadn't digested the fact that they were suddenly attacked out of nowhere just as their group had finally finished off the small orc settlement. Before they could even breathe properly, another group of enemies started killing them. And the man standing in front of them suddenly felt like a walking, talking monster himself. Khan's extension made him look like some primordial monster that knew how to take the shape of humans. And under this hallucinogenic toxin gas, his figure looked 10 meters tall and kept increasing as the time passed. "Answer me!" shouted Khan as his wrathful gaze swept over the group who were barely holding their weapons at this point. "It's him!" screamed a man under fear and pointed his hand at a middle-aged man fully clad in golden armor and held a rare rank warhammer as his weapon. "Get away from me, you monster!" shouted the man. Khan's eyes landed on the man and his eyes flickered with a yellow spark. The man fell on the ground, his body paralyzed on the spot after Khan used Executioner's Gaze. "Now which one of you tortured the redhead girl?" he asked in a commanding tone. "Ack! Save me! Get away!" The wails and screams continued in the back as Khan's subordinates were killing off the adventurers one by one who were already in complete disarray and no longer had any type of defensive formation or coordination in attacks. "It's him!" A female elven mage who also stood among this group pointed her fingers at a skinny man who was dressed in the assassin's clothes. Under this fearful state, not a single one of them could think straight and easily gave under Khan's pressure. With his current strength, he won't have any problems killing at least 30 people by himself. As for why he wasn't sparing any of these people who came to raid here, because he knew that all these guild members were the top guys and the main backbone of their guild. Unlike the people who Khan saw in their headquarters who were nothing but small fries and possibly didn't know anything regarding this case, these people certainly had heard of it or played a part in it. So there was no need to show any kindness to this group. Besides, they all had seen his army, so they had to be silenced. Khan's extensions quickly pierced the skinny assassin in his thighs and the other one picked the guildmaster. Thud! Just then, a giant figure of a Leakin dropped behind the remaining people and clutched its razor-sharp claws on the heads of the people in command. Omega's jaw then ripped open the head of a man in the middle of this group while Khan ignored the bloodied slaughter. He picked up the two men and walked away from the battlefield. "Why? Why did you kill that woman?" asked Khan to the man in golden armor. "You mean that redhead bitch? Because she wouldn't talk," replied the man as he finally regained control of his body. Khan had already taken them out of the toxin fog, so the effects had started waning. "I thought she was in love with the guy who stole my elder brother's ring, so I had this guy torture her, thinking it'd be enough. But even till her last breath, that bitch never uttered your name," said the guildmaster as he got up on his feet again and clutched his hands on the warhammer. Khan stared at the leader of this group with a lifeless expression, as if he was looking at a dead man. "That doesn't explain why you lot had to kill her," he asked. "Because the news was already leaked in our circle and other guilds. If we didn't make an example of whoever dared to steal our belongings, we'd be turned into a joke," said the guildmaster as he charged and swung his hammer at Khan. Khan quickly sidestepped and effortlessly dodged the attack. His opponent already had a weakened state and dull senses. The effect of the toxin wasn't going to be nullified this soon. "Then who gave up my name?" asked Khan as he kept dodging the man's attacks without a hitch. "It was the Black Griffin Merchant Enterprise president, Nikola Gretver. Some of our men found our previously salvaged goods and weapons being sold in his shops. And when we threatened to kill him and burn down his shops, he gladly told us your name. He even returned everything that belonged to us. As for the girl, we simply wanted to use her body to send you a message," explained the guildmaster as he faltered in his steps, barely managing his footing. Khan also noticed that the enemies were awfully cooperative and answered without holding back. Normally, nobody complies with their enemy's instructions. "Is this the effect of the fear toxin?" asked Khan to himself, and his image flickered. He quickly grabbed the warhammer from the man's hands and kicked him in the stomach, sending his body flying towards the kneeling assassin who was shivering in fear and struggled to get Khan's extension out of his thigh. Khan walked towards these two men as he heard agonizing and pleading screams from behind his back where the enemies were being massacred by his subordinates. He squatted down in front of them and took two rare rank daggers out of his space ring and spoke in a vengeful tone. Now, let's start your torture session. Under the bright sun, a gory scene of cut down, torn up and mangled corpses of 100 people filled an open battlefield. Pitiful cries for help and soul-shuddering screams filled the surroundings as an army of monsters was slaughtering these adventurers. Khan's attention was focused on the two men in front of him, a warrior and an assassin. So just to keep your so-called reputation, you guys killed an innocent woman to display your power and authority? And you thought it'd make me walk into your trap? Asked Khan to the guildmaster as he clenched his fist tightly. Just because she was powerless. Jessica was trampled upon like an ant, and these people saw her life no different than something not even worth remembering. They simply didn't even care about any consequences of killing her, and even put her corpse on a display just to enrage Khan and have him fall for their trap. We thought you were just one man, without any support of a clan or an army. Even if you were a peak grandmaster, what could you have done anyway? So we didn't fear about your outrage and wanted to see you willingly return the ring out of fear, replied the guildmaster, who was still recovering his senses. Well, it worked perfectly. You've successfully enraged me. Spoke Khan in his furious voice and stood up. Armin! He commanded the priest's subordinate, who was busy supporting and healing the others during the battle. Armin quickly stood behind Khan. Make sure that they don't die, said Khan, and brandished the two rare rank daggers. He was already well versed in the art of torture from his part-time job as Azrael. His extensions grabbed both the men from their arms and lifted them in the air. His current strength was already past 650 points, so it was no different than picking small pebbles for him. Khan clearly remembered what kind of scars and wounds Jessica's dead body had after he inspected it, so he would let her killers suffer the same fate. No, he would give them even more horrifying pain. Khan first started with the groaning guildmaster who ordered torturing her. He pulled out the armor forcefully by ripping it off with his bare hands. He stabbed his daggers in the man's stomach and twisted them inwards. Ayok! Screamed the guildmaster in pain as Khan's dagger reached inside of his stomach and pulled his entrails out with a stream of red-hot blood. Khan then stabbed the man's sternum and slowly pulled the dagger down and cut open a deep wound. His other hand sprayed another load of fear toxin and put the already screaming man in another jumble of horrified emotions. No! Let me go. I'll give you anything you want. Money. Women. Whatever you want, pleaded the middle-aged man as Khan kept cutting him open one by one. It's not about the money. It's about sending a message, replied Khan. Heal! Ordered Khan, and Armin cast a healing spell on the guildmaster. A visible recovery could be seen on the opened flesh, but this wasn't going to be an end to the little session. He moved to the man's legs and cut open his thighs and calves as the man kept screaming in pain and cursing Khan loudly. The assassin on the other side was shuddering in fear after seeing how ruthlessly Khan was torturing their guildmaster. He wondered what kind of monster Khan was to have such strong monsterly extensions, an army of ferocious monsters and things he couldn't make sense of. And all that because their guild members ordered him to torture a young woman and then decided to kill her. He then cut open the man's arms from the biceps and cut down all the long veins, making him bleed profusely and losing a lot of blood. Khan continued this torture as the horrifying screams of the guildmaster filled the entire surrounding. By now, the remaining members of this guild were close to being finished and more likely were being toyed with Khan's subordinates as they kept running from one direction to another but finding no escape route. After half an hour, Khan finally stopped as the middle-aged man fainted from the agonizing pain. He threw the body on the side. Wake him up, commanded Khan to Armin as the priest used a high-rank healing spell and woke up the guildmaster. But just then, over a dozen of black nymphs walked towards the man. Play with him as you like. Just make sure he doesn't die, ordered Khan, and left the guildmaster to the nymphs, who started poking holes in his body from place to place and chewed out his flesh with their sharp teeth while Armin kept healing him over and over. The once mighty and reputed guildmaster of the Scarlet Lion Guild the second biggest adventurer guild in the entire Flavit City, was now being tortured and lynched to death by these monsters. "Oh, no! Get away from me, you monsters!" wailed the guild master. Khan's gaze then landed on the assassin who had already wet his pants. "No! Let me go. It was them who ordered me to torture that woman. I had nothing to do with it," shouted and begged the skinny assassin. "Is that so? I checked her body. You did a really good job torturing her with passion. Probably had a lot of fun doing it as well. So I should reward you for being such a hard-working man," said Khan as he took out an iron mace from his space ring. "You beat her face with a blunt weapon, didn't you? Did your sadistic side felt joy while beating her?" asked Khan and quickly swung the mace. Crack! The man's jaw was broken and many of his teeth fell on the ground along with the spring of blood. "Master, we're done," said Omega as his 10-meter-tall body stood behind Khan. "All of you eat their cores and equip yourselves with their weapons and armors. Leave the bodies there," said Khan and returned to the assassin who was trembling and wriggling in pain but couldn't even scream. Khan hit the man with the iron mace over his shoulders, his crotch and joints. Crack! Crack! The sound of cracking bones could be heard as Khan kept hitting the man over and over again. He then cast the high-rank healing spell on the man, bringing him back from the death's door. But soon, he switched back to the daggers and started dissecting the man alive from the top of his body and to his legs. Khan's daggers opened a long gash as the fountain of blood leaked from the assassin. "Ah! Please don't kill me!" screamed and pleaded the man. But this didn't faze Khan in any way as he kept ripping apart and skinning the man again and again, and when he was close to losing consciousness, Khan would heal him back. He poked his eyeballs out with his daggers and then cut open his belly. Finally, he took out his sword from the back and cut both of the man's legs with a single swing. By now, his entire figure was drenched in red blood after torturing both these men and the ones he killed previously. After torturing the assassin for half an hour, giving him a closer look at the Grim Reaper, Khan sprayed his poison acid on the man and melted his face. He later threw the assassin close to the guildmaster and let him suffer through the lynching by the nymphs. Their brains had already gone haywire from the immense pain and could no longer think straight or even scream properly. "We're done, master. But why are we leaving the bodies here?" asked Ronan, who appeared behind Khan's back. "To let everyone know that it was me," replied Khan as he enjoyed the sight of these men being tortured to death. Khan was no different than these people who murdered others for their goals. But unlike these people, he had a bottom line. He would never implicate an innocent person in his affairs and have them suffer by being caught in the crossfire. But his actions and mistakes did exactly that, and Jessica met a cruel death. He wasn't going to be a hypocrite and run away from the responsibility, and that's why he had to exact revenge for her. Being calculative and opportunistic didn't mean being a heartless person as well. He still had his moral values and empathy despite him undergoing many changes in his demeanor and thinking process. Khan knew that this was still keeping him humane and not let him turn into a psychopath. At this moment, the image of Jessica's lifeless and tortured corpse had left a mark on his mind, something he will always remember for his life. Khan watched both men choking on their own blood and dying at the hands of the nymphs and decided to leave the dungeon. After half an hour, he finally reached the city gates. The dozens of people traveling through the gates gasped in fear as a young man donned in black clothes walked in the middle of the street. His entire body was covered in blood from head to toe, so much that even his sword was still dropping the fresh blood on the ground, and even his black clothes failed to hide the bloodstains. It was as if this man had taken a bath in a pool of blood. The guards at the gate were already swatted on the ground, and anyone who tried to stop Khan fainted on the spot under his chaotic and murderous aura. Khan kept walking through the various streets of Flavit City without the care of people looking at him with scared and baffled eyes. And when he finally reached his bungalow, there were hundreds of people already following behind him. Many to see exactly what was the case out of curiosity, while some who knew about his identity declaring his name to the masses. His reputation was already well established in the city, so many people just came to take a look at one of the strongest people in the city. Khan saw a small team of city security guards standing in front of his house. They were completely donned in their armors and weapons. In front of these people was a brunette woman dressed in dark gray armor. Khan already had met this woman. He remembered her face and name. It was none other than Lieutenant Beatrice. "He's here," said one of the soldiers as the woman looked in Khan's direction and was stunned to see his bloody figure. When Khan reached towards the entrance of his house, the woman finally spoke. "Mr. Khan, we need you to come with us," spoke Beatrice. In response, Khan quickly activated war dominance at full capacity and put all the soldiers and onlookers on their knees under his horrifying and heavy black and red aura. He looked at the woman and finally spoke. "Not now, Lieutenant," said Khan as his gaze landed on something that was covered under the white sheets on his sofa. Jessica's dead body. "I have a funeral to attend." Khan stood in front of his house as he stared at the group of city guards and Lieutenant Beatrice. "I'll come later. Let me conclude the matter peacefully or you'll get on my wrong side." He straight up threatened the law enforcer squad that was directly under the command of Captain Nordak. He simply didn't have time to waste answering the questions. Sooner, his deeds were going to spread around anyway. I understand," spoke the lieutenant and left without rebutting Khan because she could feel the anger in his eyes and his aura was many times fiercer than she had seen him previously. And she was already familiar with this feeling, because she once felt the same type of chaotic aura from Commander Strays. "He's already a Grandmaster," spoke Beatrice to herself in shock and ordered her forces to return because if they pissed Khan off, who knew if they'd be able to return to their homes alive or not. Khan entered the house and saw Jerome standing along with few people. "Sir, what happened?" asked Jerome in bewilderment after seeing Khan completely drenched in blood. "Settled some overdue scores." "Who are these people?" replied and asked Khan. "They're from the morgue and then ones on the right are from City Cemetery," explained Jerome. "Is there a way I can have her buried in a place of my choosing? I'll pay you guys twice the normal price," he declared. The men standing behind Jerome nodded in response. Just then, a set of footsteps reached his ear and he looked back at the door. "Khan, are you okay?" asked a young slim man clothed in silky white attire who looked no older than him. Behind him, walked in an old man with a long and plain beard. "What are you two doing here?" "Came to make sure that I was dead," he asked to the newcomer duo of a young old man. They were the father-son duo of Nikola and Elenev. "What do you mean?" asked Elenev. "Why don't you tell your son, you old bastard?" shouted Khan as he stared at the old man Nikola. "Father, what is he talking about? You only told me that the Scarlet Lion Guild was looking for him," asked Elenev to his father. But in response, Nikola only hung his head down and didn't dare to see Khan in his eyes. "I'm sorry, kid. It's just that I couldn't offend those people and had to protect my people and shops. Otherwise, they would have killed us and—" "Save it for someone who cares about your justification," interjected Khan in the old man Nikola's words, and he walked towards the dead body on the sofa. He took out the sheet from Jessica's face. "Remember her? She was also there when you people were attacked by those bandits. She was also one of the people I saved that day when those bastards from Scarlet Lion Guild were being massacred inside the dungeon. And do you know how she repaid me?" asked Khan in his furious tone. "She was tortured for hours but still didn't speak a word about me. They would have kept her alive for some more time if you hadn't opened your mouth. And do you know what they did to her after you revealed my name? They murdered her in cold blood and hung her body on the next street just to send me a message," declared Khan, holding the old man responsible. Because if the old man hadn't cowered in fear and maintained a firm stance, Jessica would have had some more time and maybe Khan could have found a way to save her in case he was alerted beforehand about her being held captive because of him. "I'm sorry. I didn't know it'd turn out like this," Nikola faltered in his words after looking at the bruised-up face and lifeless corpse of the redhead girl. We're sorry, Khan. We didn't mean this to happen," said Elenev. "Sir, we should hurry. It's against the customs to bury someone after the sunset," spoke Jerome. "Kid, we have our own lands. You can bury her in one of them. I know I'm at fault for her death as well. At least let me give her a proper resting place. I promise we'll look after her tomb," said Nicola with a face full of guilt. Not only he had betrayed and gave up on the person who once saved his and his only son's life, but his actions also played a part in a young woman's untimely death. So he wanted to repent for his deeds. Khan agreed. He was still disappointed in them, but he also wanted to give her a proper funeral. They left for the lands Nicola mentioned, and after traveling to the foremost west of the city, they entered a hillside area where some rich people lived in their extravagant houses. In Rocco's empire, the funeral was conducted by druids who prayed to Mother Nature and carried out the funeral procedure. The people from the Morgva cemetery also provided their services as Khan was paying them double. The gravesite was decided under a full-grown tree which had light blue leaves. The entire place was serene and contained a lot of natural beauty to it. Just before the burial was to be started, Marcus, Jessica's old subordinate and also the former leader of the Diamond Adventurer group, reached at the place. He was informed by Nicola and came with another old man with short white hair and a grizzly beard. As per customs, they said their prayers to the deceased, and Jessica's body was buried with the hands of Khan and Marcus. The middle-aged man barely held up his tears as he lost another one of his old comrades just in a gap of a month. After everyone had their share of prayers, they started leaving. Only Khan, Jerome, and the old man who came with Marcus stayed behind. But he didn't come near or spoke anything, only stood at the end of the site, far away from everyone. Khan looked at the grave and he put his hand on the tombstone, although he had a very small interaction with Jessica. Just after learning how she did not give up the identity of the man who saved her life twice, had gained his respect for her. An unspeakable bond was formed between them at this moment. It was an odd feeling for Khan because he truly had no one who he trusted in this new world, and despite all that, this young woman had given her life to repay his kindness for saving her twice. Never again. I can't let anyone die because of me ever again. He made a resolute vow to himself at this moment. "Sir, we must leave," said Jerome, who was standing at the entrance of this site. Only when Khan exited the site did the old man standing at the end walk towards the grave and kneel down. "Who's that old man? Was he her family?" asked Khan, who was looking at the old man from a far distance. "It's good if you stay away from that old man, sir. His story is a complicated one," replied Jerome. Khan didn't ask for more details as he already had too much for one day, and he felt a sense of loss and guilt in his mind. Although he had avenged her, this feeling would take some time to go away. He also vowed to visit her again if he ever came back to this city in future years. With a heavy heart, he bid farewell to Jessica Artwinger. The next day, Khan's deeds had reached many government and military officials, business organizations, and noble clans because of a sudden incident that shook the power balance in the city. Because the news of Khan's outrage in the headquarters of Scarlet Lion Guild, and then suddenly, all their top fighters, including the guildmaster found dead inside the Sintra dungeon, spread like wildfire among the top powers of the city. This knowledge was not made public by anyone even now, but those with connections always had their means to gain inside information. And him walking inside the city while being completely covered in blood proved as a fact because hundreds of people had seen him. So naturally, the elites also heard of this news from their informants. However, one man killing hundreds of experienced adventurers was unbelievable to many, and even some laughed at it, thinking of it as another baseless and over-exaggerated rumor. Khan, the main culprit of this massacre, was merrily eating his breakfast in a content mood, as if he hadn't caused a bloodbath yesterday. Today, he had to meet some people in the law enforcement hall. Khan departed for the meeting he had with Captain Nordak. They were definitely going to ask about yesterday's events, so he already had few backup plans. "It's good to see you again, Mr. Khan," said Captain Nordak as he welcomed him inside his office. "Likewise. May I know why have I been summoned?" asked Khan, playing coy with his words. "I think you already know that. I have some questions for you regarding 3 people who were murdered yesterday. 1 whose body you took in your house, 2 people you killed inside Scarlet Lion Guild," said Nordak. "Normally, no one gets this type of treatment and gets arrested on the spot. So you can consider this us doing you a favor. Now, care to explain? Asked Nordak, and Lieutenant Beatrice, who was standing on the right side, put a hand on her sword hilt. No need to get worked up, Captain. I'll tell you everything. The truth is, around 12 days ago, I took a space ring from a dead body on the 9th floor of the Bromner dungeon during my hunts and also saved a survivor named Jessica Artwinger. Khan then recounted how he found goods inside the space ring and sold them. But he didn't know about it belonging to the Scarlet Lion Guild, as the survivor had fainted back then. And then elaborated the story of them causing a scene in Black Griffin merchant shops and how they tortured Jessica just to scare him and killed her to send him a message. He certainly obscured many details but did not hide the fact of him killing the 2 people inside the guild hall out of a fit of rage. His story matched with everything they had already gathered with witnesses and people from Nicola's side. But when I got inside the Sintra dungeon to find them, they were already dead in a battle against an army of orcs, replied Khan, making it sound believable as he masked his massacre and took the blame of only killing 2 people and not more than 100. Let's say we believe you. Still, killing 2 people in broad daylight is a crime punishable with the death sentence, said Captain Nordak. I suppose that you have some way to make it go away? Otherwise, I'd already be behind bars. Am I right, Honorable Magistrate? Replied Khan and looked behind. He quickly released Ward Dominance aura at full capacity, and suddenly, a barrier came into existence, and behind this barrier, the old Lionkins figure was revealed, who had some sort of artifact in his hands. So it's true. You've indeed broken through the Grandmaster rank, exclaimed the magistrate of Flavit City in surprise. You're full of surprises indeed, Mr. Khan, spoke the magistrate and sat across the opposite chair. Let's get to point, Honorable Magistrate. What do you want in return to make this matter drop? Asked Khan, as he didn't want to beat around the bush. Going straight for the head of the snake, I see. It's simple. I want you to join our side, replied the magistrate as he interlocked his hands. And why do you want me to join you? Asked Khan. To be honest, we're lacking strong people on our side. The military has commander strays, the noble clans have 4 grandmasters on their side, and the adventurer guild has Solomon and Arkham. Even though these factions look like being in harmony on the surface, there's a war for authority and power you can't even think of. Join us and I'll make this matter go away. You'll also hold a vast authority in the city after joining our ranks. I promise you that, said the magistrate. They had dirt on Khan, so they were trying to use it. I refuse, replied Khan without a hitch. What? Do you not understand what situation you're in? Shouted the magistrate in disbelief. I have no intentions to fight your war and join any factions. I just want to be left alone. However, if you agree to bury the case, I'll do a big favor for you, replied Khan nonchalantly. Although he had made few plans to counteract the scenario where he would be persecuted and was even prepared to bribe the top officers, he didn't expect the magistrate to show up there and watch him from the shadows. Their plan seemed to be about reeling him on their side by using those murders. But at the end of the day, he had already made his rule that he won't work for or serve under anybody and live that life of corporate slavery again in his new life. What kind of favor you can do me, if I may ask? Asked the magistrate with a conniving expression on his face as he caressed his long white beard. 3 people. No questions asked. If I'm not wrong, only Commander Strays, President Solomon Va, a few of the old members of the noble clans are beyond my reach. I can handle the rest, replied Khan. The 3 people present in this room gasped in surprise as Khan was outright saying that he'll kill 3 people for them to have this matter dropped. He was just being too straightforward. Even Lieutenant Beatrice, who had a decent impression of Khan, was surprised to see how this man didn't shy away from acting like a contract killer. I hope you think about it. After all, I can always run away from the city and none of you will be able to stop me. But rather than making each other an enemy, how about we find a middle ground that would benefit both sides? Spoke Khan and faintly released his domineering and terrifying aura, again with a smile on his face. I see, that makes sense. Although it's a shame that you won't join us. I can still get behind this deal, but I hope you will be discreet and won't ask any questions, said the magistrate and shook Khan's hand. after the previous burst of murderous and violent aura. He knew that they won't be able to control Khan and blackmail him with a petty excuse of killing 2 people. However, Khan's preposition was far more beneficial to him as his connections and people were incapable of killing some truly strong influential people that opposed and troubled the magistrate. And now he was certain that Khan would be able to deliver on his words. There were no saints in this power struggle. So having Khan as someone who would work as his blade was indeed a deal worth making. And just like that, Khan walked away free of any charges. As for those who'd try to come after him for revenge for the Scarlet Lion Guild or any other reason, he'd simply slaughter them just like he did yesterday. Khan decided that he needed to carry his work of hunting because he realized that if he truly wanted to be free and never get forced to do someone's bidding, he needed strength that would scare anyone even if they thought about blackmailing him. Let's hope the next hunt will be worth it. After settling his affairs with the magistrate and receiving a clean chit, more like a bribe chit, Khan visited his biggest harvest mine and his other half, the Brahmner dungeon. Today he was going to attempt the 14th floor of this dungeon. So far, this dungeon had given him a lot of resources, harvest, and even plenty of his subordinates. And thanks to the later floors of this dungeon, his allies including Omega, Blackwell, Oliver Ronan had undergone evolution and reached Lord rank with each floor he finished. Also, the extra subordinates he gained in the form of Legion raised his strength in numbers. From the old records, this dungeon contained only 15 floors, and Khan had reached up to the 13th floor till now. Thanks to some sort of magical formation inside the dungeon, only those who successfully killed the previous floor bosses after the 10th floor boss, let it be individually or in groups, would be marked and allowed to enter the next floors. Otherwise, he'd have to have finished them again, and also, anyone could raid on any floor as they pleased. This sophisticated mechanism allowed only truly worthy to progress farther, or else, this dungeon would have been ransacked decades ago. But because of that, there were only fewer records available only till the 13th floor, and not a single person had managed to enter the 14th floor in the past 20 or so years. So he was going in blind for the first time in his hunts. Khan entered the floor grounds and saw a scenery of night filled with black clouds and white moonlight shimmering and spread upon the black and completely withered trees. The ground, the leaves, the rocks were all black. If not for the bright moon, one would not even be able to see the outlines of the surrounding. A bone-chilling breeze passed by in Khan, and he let out a chattering noise of the teeth and felt a shiver in his body despite his defense being above 530 points. Swish! Swish! 2 figures jumped out of his shadow and stood beside him. "You know the drill," said Khan to both Ronan Oliver, his most effective efficient subordinates when it came to gathering information or searching for enemies. Ronan had shadow shift, stealth concealment skill, while Oliver had archer's sight, silence walk heat sense skill, which made both of them the best choices to do reconnaissance without getting noticed or found out by the enemies. Khan and his allies spread in 3 different directions and started looking for signs of living beings and any enemies they would need to fight. After spending some time looking for enemies, Khan had failed to notice anything worth considering as enemies. It felt as if the entire floor was some sort of abyss where everything was completely dark and had no living being here. Oliver, who had the farthest range and tracking skills, also failed to find any enemies. Suddenly, Khan received an alert signal from Ronan, who had now entered inside a cave and noticed few living beings. Well, not actually living beings, but something that was once alive. The undead. In any fantasy novel or mangas, undead played a prominent role, as the majority of the protagonists would either fight these undead at some point, as if it was an unspoken rule between all the authors. Some protagonists fought them, some used them to gain EXP, some harvested their bodies, and some were even reincarnated as these undead in the form of skeleton soldiers or a lich. The stories of the undead had a separate community under fantasy isekai category themselves. And Khan found himself living the same cliché story today. If this was a fictional novel story, I'd say that the author is not very creative, said Khan. Suddenly Khan felt a chill under his spine for some unknown reason. Khan Oliver ran towards the cave where Ronan had already killed off over a dozen skeleton undead and cleared a path for them. Since he was a Lord rank monster now, Ronan had no problems while finishing this many undead without causing a commotion or alerting even more undeads. And the extensions on his back also made it very easy for him to handle multiple opponents at the same time. If these were living beings, he'd use the toxin mist ability he had inherited from the 13th floor boss himself. For someone like Con Oliver Va Ronan, it wasn't an issue because all of them actually had hunting skills that allowed them to see through the dark just like the early morning. In just 10 minutes, Con and Oliver met Ronan inside the cave and started looking for enemies. And since this cave had plenty of entrances and tunnels leading to different places, they had to split up again to cover the maximum distance and save time looking for the enemies. After another 20 minutes of searching through various places using Hunter's intent, Con finally found a deep and far bigger tunnel in the inner parts of this cave. And after he finally reached a safe place undetected using Shadow Walk, he finally gazed at the floor boss, a 10-meter-tall body of a hooded undead who was wearing purple mage-like robes and had few spellbooks floating around it in the air. This undead floor boss looked exactly like an undead lich as it was sitting on a throne made of completely white bones and shattered bodies. The figure seemed to be chanting some sort of spell and experimenting with these bony bodies of the undead creatures, mixing them in a way and trying to create a different type of monster. What caught Con's eyes the most wasn't the army of hundreds of undead creatures, and neither were the different types of skeletal monsters that stood in this army, but rather the type of magic this lich was using. Although Con could use many elemental spells related to fire, wind, water, even thunder, he never felt a perfect connection with these spells and magic elements. But when he saw the lich performing its spells and creating even more undeads, he felt a sense of attachment towards the element of this magic. For the first time since Con entered in Vantria, he found the element he had the highest affinity with, the dark magic. Con felt every inch in his body resonating with the magic this undead lich was casting, as if he had an intimate connection towards this element of reality. So far, he hadn't seen a single person, even some top-tier mages, use dark magic ever since he came to Flavit City. Is this magic forbidden in this world? He asked himself, because if what god of darkness told him was right, anything related to him was wiped off from the face of the planet because of what Con's predecessor, the 8th hero, did 300 years ago. Only undead and demonic monsters would possess this type of magical element to them because of the natural inborn affinity. No human like Con should have any resonance with this magic. He now remembered the system once telling him that he had one of the highest affinity to dark magic and dark elements in this world because he was chosen and his body was created by God of Darkness. And that's why all his physical abilities and skills he gained from absorbing monsters and merging skills were all pitch black. This was the only reasonable explanation he could accept. Con then activated Hunter's intent at full capacity and felt the aura of the undead lich. From the pressure alone, Con was certain that the lich was at least a Lord rank undead. Then his gaze shifted to the monsters that surrounded this figure. 8 giant skeletal creatures. Some had 4 to 6 legs, while some of them had walked on 2 feet, and all of them were equipped with makeshift weapons made of tusk-like bones. Around this lich, the 5 spellbooks that floated in the air were emitting a red glow, and a tangible thread was connected to all the monsters and the skeletal army that was about more than 500 undead soldiers. Damn! I'm so screwed here, cursed Con as he found no way to defeat this enemy, because his advantage in numbers was gone. Even with 4 Lord rank monsters at his side, he couldn't possibly take on this army. And since they were all undead, his toxin fog won't work on them either. He couldn't use Divide Conquer trick here either because the numbers were so big that even if he were to create a diversion like he did with the Nymph floor boss, the lich wouldn't send its entire army to fight against only 50 or so enemies. Plus, he felt like the lich would definitely have some way to command and see through these undead just like Con could. And to make it hard, the undead warriors surrounding the lich seemed no weaker than his generals who hadn't gone through evolution. So he literally had no advantage or any viable strategy to take out this floor boss. Plus, he hadn't even found a way to see the strength of the lich or its fighters. As for using the mana bombs that could wipe out everything in 500 meters radius were out of the question because they were inside a cave. He would be buried alive under the ground if he used that, and since the place itself was an enclosed space with too many tunnels, He couldn't call out a certain snake either. Khan was truly out of options. All of these things are undead. Nothing but bones and no flesh or blood in them. I can't even absorb their abilities or create more subordinates to face off against the Lich, said Khan as he contemplated his chances. What if I kite them? Thought Khan. It was the only and most effective plan he could think of. Leading your enemies into a trap and then whittling down their numbers one by one till only the main bosses left was called kiting in gaming terminology. Khan, who also had a lot of gaming experience in his teenage days, was very well familiar with this strategy when playing many RPG and adventure genre games. Because if he dared to fight this floor boss and its army altogether, there would be only one outcome. Total annihilation. Maybe then this Lich would turn Khan into one of its puppets as well, and his zombified body would clean off the Lich's shiny white bones. Khan shook his head quickly and buried that thought. Then kiting it is. He spoke inwardly and walked away from the open grounds and dashed towards one of the tunnels that appeared narrow for many to enter together. This way, the number of enemies that could enter inside them at once would be limited and Khan could slowly finish them one with the help of his subordinates. After finally finding a tunnel that led to a ground big enough to carry out a small battle and had the advantage in height and attacking the enemies inside an enclosed place, Khan ordered Oliver to attack and bring small groups of undead towards their direction. He presumed that killing in small numbers won't easily catch the attention of the Lich, which was busy creating new monsters for the first few waves at least. Let's hope reading those RPG novels and playing the games actually proves useful, said Khan as he prepared to face the skeleton soldiers. Oliver had reached the exit of the tunnel and shot few arrows at the group of skeletons, instantly attracting over 10 of these skeletons. Khan, who was looking through Oliver's vision, also noticed one thing. That these creatures followed the sound and only got alerted when something noisy happened in their closer proximity. He commanded Oliver to lead them by the nose with his unending supply of pole extension arrows and bring them to their designated tunnel. Only if this world setting was similar to a game. I could have farmed a lot of free EXP and gained a lot of equipments they dropped as loot, said Khan as he cursed his luck of being thrown in the world with the wrong setting. With his divine abilities, he could have benefited a lot if there was an experience point setting to level up and even an attribute allocation system. Come here, you bastards. Let's see who has a bigger bone. Khan and his subordinates set up an ambush at the other end of the narrow tunnel, while Oliver successfully led a group of 10 skeleton undeads by shooting arrows around their surroundings and attracting them using the noise. The completely fleshless bodies of the skeletons clattered while walking as their bones hit each other, and their zombie-like walk took a lot of time for them to reach the other end. Khan, who watching this through Oliver's vision, also noticed that there was a small amount of visible black smoke leaking out of these skeletons. And it was nothing else but the dark magic that was keeping these bodies intact and move them. But as soon as the skeletons entered the proximity, they sensed a life form, and suddenly, their hollow eyes glimmered with a fiery red glow. The unmotivated bodies of the walking dead now suddenly showed a hint of intelligence and gazed at the living being that was leaning against a wall. There was a figure of a human who was sitting against a wall and the cold floor at the other side of this small cave-like space. His arms were folded together and his eyes were closed. He looked completely carefree and didn't mind the group of undead looking at him with malicious intentions. The group of skeletons sprung in action and ran towards this humanoid creature. The humanoid and carefree figure was none other than Khan. But at this moment, his head was leaning against the wall and didn't seem to care if someone was attacking him, because at this moment, Khan was sleeping. Yes, during an incoming attack. Khan was dozing off without the care of the enemies. Clatter. Rattle. But before the skeleton undead could even reach halfway to their target, a reddish and tangible barrier was cast upon them, and suddenly, their bony bodies no longer produced any sort of sound. Cyril, who was standing on top of a small boulder, waved his hands, and the area of the silence barrier enlarged more than twice the earlier size. A giant figure of a black and furry lichen jumped inside this barrier, and in just a few seconds, it utterly decimated the skeletons, breaking their entire bodies with a few swipes of his claws. I already gave you lot of feast yesterday. There are no free meals in the world. So keep on going, commanded Khan, and went back to his merry sleep. He was acting as bait to lead the skeletons to attack him the moment they saw him and enter inside their already prepared ambush hotspot. This way, his subordinates could take them out effectively without wasting any time or produce any commotion that would alert the Lich for the first few times. Now Ronan va Oliver both started the work of luring out the undead, while Cyril handled the silence barrier and Omega and Jugram finished them off. The first two waves were of only 10 skeletons, but then both the subordinates started bringing in more enemies by themselves, as if there was some sort of competition between them. Although their numbers were increasing, in front of a Lord-rank monster like Omega and a Berserker like Jugram, they stood no chance, as they always walked in the trap of attacking Khan as soon as they sensed his presence. Little by little, they started whittling down their numbers, and in the span of 3 hours, Khan's subordinates had managed to kill more than 200 of these skeleton soldiers. Since these skeletons didn't have any weapons on them, they could barely put up a resistance against the duo of Omega and Jugram, while Ronan va Oliver kept bringing more skeletons to gnaw on. Khan, who finally woke up from his nap and yawned, suddenly heard a loud march of footsteps from 600 meters away from the other end of the tunnel. "So it begins," he said, and ordered both Oliver and Ronan to openly attack and bring the horde of the enemies through the tunnels ran towards their direction. "Everyone, get ready," said Khan and the remaining of the 6 generals, and the legion jumped out of his shadow and finally prepared for a frontal clash. Thud, thud, pitter, patter. The army of the dead charged through this narrow tunnel, each line containing only 4 to 5 skeletons at most, while they were walking in exactly the spot where Khan wanted them to be. The biggest problem was going to be none other than those skeleton warriors the floor boss had created. Just 2 of them were enough to hold off one Lord-rank subordinate of Khan. So 8 of them were enough to hold off his top fighters. And that's why Khan had chosen the narrow tunnels, so that they won't be overwhelmed in terms of numbers or combat power. Both Khan and Cyril attacked the incoming horde with their large AoE and destructive fire, wind va lightning spells, while Blackwell, Jugram va Omega facing them head-on along with the Minotaurs and the Nymphs from the Legion. Khan's side had a total of 52 fighters, while the opposition still had more than 300 members left. Still not taking actions by itself? Or perhaps it can't leave that place? Asked Khan as he noticed that everyone from the enemy side except the undead Lich itself didn't come to attack him. "Attack!" declared Khan as his side attacked and engaged with the enemies that were coming in small groups, and even his stealth-related subordinates joined this arduous battle of breaking bad. Breaking bones. Without the Lich itself ordering the undead army, there wasn't much resistance these 300 or so skeletons could put as they entered little by little through the tunnels and were destroyed in a full-blown ambush by his side. Khan used Firestorm and Windcutter simultaneously and killed far many skeletons compared to his subordinates. His advantage in mana va long-range attacks helped him a lot. After breaking through the Grandmaster rank, he was far more powerful than before, and his attacks with mage spells and sword had already reached a point where these small-timers proved no threat to him. Another 2 hours passed as he finally managed to kill the remaining army of the undead. Even the giant monsters were taken care of under Khan's impeccable coordination with his subordinates. They were all unique rank monsters at the end, so his side didn't have too much trouble taking care of them. He put a high-grade health va stamina recovery potion in his mouth and prepared to meet the Lich. He couldn't get any cores or absorb abilities from these undead, so he didn't bother spending any time on them. He traveled to the Lich's location with his own army this time. "Human, do not think that you've won. You only gained some more time before your death. For I am the death. For I am the eternal darkness. I am a god," spoke the Lich floor boss, who was wearing long and hooded purple mage robes. Khan looked at the fiery red eyes of the undead Lich and spoke. "I don't have to listen to your monologue, you wanna be Ain's ul gown," replied Khan. "Now, let's get this party started."